Bonsoir, mes amis. Hope everybody's doing good. Old Crawdaddy here. I'm over here. I made a block of wood and to hold the camera up there, my contraption, and got a big old welding clamp holding it to the cabinet, so I can show you guys what I'm working on here. But I had a request to do a video on stropping, my version of stropping or sharpening a knife. And so I don't know how long it's going to take. It just take how long it'll take. So if you want to watch, fine. If not, that's cool too. So okay. So when I used to, I couldn't sharpen a knife. My favorite knife has always been, and probably will always be, some kind of a razor knife like this, because it's fast, it's, you know, if it's not sharp, you know, it's easy enough to change out and all that kind of stuff. But that's my favorite knife. When we're thinking about sharpening, or you think about knives, using a knife, whatever, everything comes down to angles. For instance, I don't make videos where I'm batoning wood because batoning wood has zero to do with how sharp a knife is, or edge retention, because the edge is really not ever touching, the edge of the knife is never really touching the wood. If you have a knife right here, and then you have a piece of wood that you're batoning into, when that wood starts to split, you're not even touching the point of the knife. The wood will actually ride up onto whatever shoulder is there on the knife, not ever touching this point. And so, you know, to me, it's kind of kabuki theater. I'm gonna sit out there and bust up a whole bunch of do a lot of batoning. Batoning proves, in my opinion, it proves nothing about the qualities of a knife or anything like that. I saw a guy take a butter knife and baton with it. So I mean, but a lot of people like kabuki theater. They want to be entertained, and they don't care about reality. All they just want to do is be entertained. But so that's probably why I don't have a whole lot of people sub to my channel. But anyway, so that's batoning. But when we're talking about knives and we're talking about angles, I'm going to draw this kind of big. Whatever the angle that you have on your secondary grind, whether it's a flat grind with a convex or a V grind, hollow grind with a convex or a V grind, a convex, a full convex, whatever it is, at the end of the knife, down at the bottom, the business end of it, you're going to have this right here. Doesn't matter what the rest of the knife looks like. This is the business part of it, and every knife is going to look just like this if you look at it underneath, you know, a microscope. They're all going to come to some kind of a 0-point edge where it's got a point, because that's what cuts. And so, like on a Scandi grind, this whole thing is the same bevel as this smaller bevel here. The difference is that on this flat grind with a convex secondary, or a V grind secondary even, the flat grind is about 6 or 7 degrees, something like that. Your secondary edge bevel is going to be probably, most knives, in between 20-25 degrees inclusive. That's take both angles on both sides. And where that angle comes from is when you take this angle and that angle and you add them together, and that's what they call like a 20-degree inclusive, or 23 or 25-degree inclusive, or whatever. That's what they're talking about. Well, this and this, for geeks and giggles, let's say that both of those have a 25-degree edge angle. The Scandi grind has this whole wide bevel is the angle that the cutting business portion of it, when you sharpen, is you're sharpening. On a flat grind, a convex, or a hollow grind, It's this portion, this small portion down here on the end. Okay. Now, there's been a lot of people poo-pooing the Scandi grind, and you know, it's a matter of personal preference, but I'll talk about that briefly here. I mean, this may end up being 2 parts, I don't know. But anyway, when you start talking about resharpening a knife, when you sharpen or resharpen a knife, when you use a knife, so let's get back to our drawing here. Can you guys see that? Let me see. Yep. Can I zoom that in? There we go. Okay. So when you use a knife, what you're doing is you're actually wearing off this tip right here. You're removing steel. And so as knife makers, one of the craze with going to these uber hard, uber whatever, new steel this and new steel that, you know, at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is minimize the wear, the removal of that steel as you're using a knife. I have no idea what these people are using a knife for that's that big a concern. I mean, we've got knives that are being handed down from grandpa to dad to son to, you know, the grandson. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of knife left, but I mean, you talk about 75 years of hard use and there's still knife left, you know, so whatever. So when you use a knife, you're actually removing steel. And when you go to sharpen a knife, the black that you see that is remaining on whatever you're using to sharpen that knife, that black is the steel. So you're removing that steel when you sharpen a knife. So as you remove that, in order to get back to the next one, you have to come inside of that old line to create a new, I call it a 0 point. The edge that's right there, that 0 point, that pinnacle is the sharp portion that you're working on. And so when you sharpen a knife, when it's like this, and you remove steel, and then you have to remove more steel in order to create a new cutting edge. And so whenever you're talking about a hollow grind, a flat grind, or a convex, as you're grinding down, this bevel gets thicker as you go down. So this cutting edge may be, when I make the knife, it may be at, let's say, 20 thousandths of an inch. But after you use this knife several times and you resharpen the knife several times, it may go from 20 thousandths to 25, then to 30 thousandths, then to 40. And every time you resharpen that knife, it's going to go up this blade, and it's just going to get thicker and thicker and thicker. So instead of having, let's say, a 22-degree inclusive convex secondary, the cutting edge, instead of 22 degrees, you're then going to have something in the neighborhood of 25 or 6. And the only way to get around that is you're going to have to come back in and grind meat off of the side of the thing to thin it back down. The thing I like about the Scandi grind is because whenever you sharpen it, if you stay on the same bevel angle, you're keeping the same thickness through the entirety of the life of the knife. And so if it's 22 degrees, when you sharpen the knife, if you hold that angle, it's going to be 22 degrees and the same thickness throughout however many times you sharpen that knife. And so the cutting characteristics, the edge geometry, whatever terminology you want to use for the quality that is the cutting, and all of the dimensions and all of the things that go into that cutting edge, that edge geometry remains consistent from one sharpening session to the next. Now, it's going to take a lot of sharpenings to get this affected to that point on a flat grind, a hollow grind, or a convex, but eventually there will be a thickening of the cutting edge. Just simple, you know, subtraction. You take it off there, it starts getting thicker as you go down. There's no way around that. So the secret that I learned, and I learned how to sharpen a knife on a Scandi knife. The secret is there's no secret. It's being able to hold an angle, the angle that whatever that angle is. Let me give you an example here. Here's my strop. And so whenever I put the knife down like this, flat, the wide part down. When I raise it up, like on a Scandi grind or whatever, then when you feel that angle engage, that's the angle that it's going to be. And that's the angle that you want to work at. And the more consistent that you can maintain that angle, the sharper that you can get the knife more quickly. If you're taking, and as you're pulling up, if you're pulling up this, if you're pulling it out like that, that's an exaggeration. But if you're doing that, what you're doing is you're actually rolling the cutting edge, and you're not ever going to get it sharp because you're removing the steel whenever you get to that roll, okay, when you roll it. So what you want to do, again, is just make sure you're holding through the entirety of the stroke. You're holding that same angle through the entirety. And it doesn't matter if it's a Scandi grind, a hollow grind, a flat grind, a convex grind, whatever the grind is, you find that angle and you hold that angle through the entirety of it, okay? And so that's whenever you're cutting, whenever you're you're out in the woods and you're making feather sticks or whatever, what you're doing is you're looking for that angle, that optimal angle to give you the best. I'm messing up my stick here. I cut it out of there. You're looking for that optimum angle that's going to give you the best cutting characteristics. So if I cut this way, I'm not going to cut anything. You see? I have to get it to that right angle. If I go too far, it's not going to cut. So you're looking for that angle. And that angle that you're using to cut is the usage, I would call the usage angle, the optimum usage angle. So your optimum sharpening angle, which would be, say, 22 degrees inclusive, everything that you do, whether you're using sandpaper or sharpening stones or whatever, you want to hold that angle the best you can. And the better you can hold that angle, the more consistently, then the sharper you can get your knife and take the least amount of steel out of the thing. So I think that's going to cover the angle, the edge angle. The process that I use when I do a knife, if you look on, like, this is the spine of the knife, this is the belly down here. We'll have a little bit of education here. This is the plunge line, this area. Where'd my pen go? This is the plunge line right here. This area, but from the plunge line to the front of the handle is called the ricasso. This is the belly. Anything cut into the bottom of the knife is called a choil. So on this knife I have an edge, a cutting edge termination choil. This is index finger choil, and this is the rest of your fingers choil. They just needed a fancy name to be able to identify parts of the knife. So clip point, drop point, doesn't matter. This is the spine of the knife. This is the heel or the butt of the knife. This is the tip, of course. So anyway, what was I talking about? Okay, anyway. Alright, so back on track. So that's what it was, when I'm grinding a knife. Okay, so when I grind a knife, I'm taking this thickness and I'm thinning it down, and I take it down to, say, 20 thousandths or 18 thousandths of an inch. When I go to set the secondary bevel in, I can look in and let the light flash out, shine off of it, and you can see the flat. You'll see a flat spot all the way down this. Well, as I'm on the sanding belt and I go across that belt and I'm creating a burr, and then I go the opposite direction and I get the burr to roll this way, I should be able to look at the top of the knife and not see any of those flat spots shining in the light. Once I have that, then I come off of the grinder, the sanding belt, and then I come over and I have a coarse grit stone. It's just an oil. I use oil stones. I know there's Japanese water stones and all that stuff. This is just what I have, and you can get one of these at Harbor Freight for like $2. These are coarse. These are not fine. Okay, so when it says coarse and fine, these are extremely coarse stones. Don't expect to get a mirror finish with these things because they are going to remove quite a bit of material. Excuse me. What I'm doing with this is I am taking any inconsistencies that I have from grinding the cutting edge in